Once upon a time, there was a quirky and adventurous scientist named Professor Whizzbuckle. He was a peculiar fellow with hair that always seemed to be in a perpetual state of disarray and spectacles that magnified his bright, curious eyes. Professor Whizzbuckle lived in an extraordinary house that was unlike any other, a house that roamed the land on giant wheels. This miraculous house on wheels had everything he needed, from a cozy living room to a grand laboratory at the back, where he conjured his wildest inventions. One sunny morning, as Professor Whizzbuckle was tinkering in his laboratory, he stumbled upon an idea that had been tickling the back of his mind for quite some time. "Eureka!" he exclaimed, causing his pet parrot, Pollo, to flutter in startled circles. "I shall build a time machine." The thought of journeying through time filled him with excitement and fueled his creativity. For weeks, Professor Whizzbuckle worked day and night, tweaking gears, aligning circuits, and scribbling complicated equations on chalkboards until his hands were covered in chalk dust. Pollo was his faithful companion, perched on his shoulder and occasionally offering a squawk of encouragement. The time machine slowly took shape in the center of the laboratory, a dazzling contraption of gleaming metal, blinking lights, and whirring sounds. Finally, the day arrived when the time machine was ready for its maiden voyage. Professor Whizzbuckle strapped on his goggles, adjusted his eccentric bow tie, and with Pollo by his side, he climbed into the time machine. With a deep breath, he pulled the bright red lever that was marked Go. The room around them began to quiver and shimmer as the time machine spun to life, creating swirls of color and flashes of light. Suddenly, with a whoosh and a whir, they were transported back to a time long, long ago where dinosaurs roamed the earth. Professor Whizzbuckle stared in awe at the towering creatures, while Pollo hopped excitedly on his shoulder, mimicking the sounds of the prehistoric jungle. They marveled at the vast ferns and the giant dragonflies that buzzed around them. But just as they were getting comfortable, a T-Rex caught sight of them and roared menacingly. "Oh, Pollo, I think it's time to go," exclaimed the professor. Pulling the lever once more, the time machine whisked them away seconds before the T-Rex could reach them. The machine whirled and twirled, bringing them next to the medieval age. They landed in the middle of a grand knights tournament. As armored knights jousted and spectators cheered, Professor Whizzbuckle and Pollo clapped in delight. However, a curious group of onlookers began to gather around, amazed by the strange mechanical marvel. Fearing they might be considered sorcerers, the professor quickly adjusted the dials and set off again, knowing the time machine still had many places to explore. This time, they found themselves in a grand library in the distant future, where books floated in midair and robots zipped quietly along the aisles. The professor filled his pockets with ideas and inspiration from this serene and advanced world. With each leap in time, Professor Whizzbuckle learned new things and encountered incredible adventures, from attending a magnificent ball in the 1800s to witnessing the first human land on Mars. Each era offered a slice of wonder, adventure, and a piece of history that he carefully documented in his trusty notebook. In the end, Professor Whizzbuckle returned to his own time, his heart filled with stories of amazement, lessons learned, and friendships made across centuries.